All right. Why oh my, Donald Trump? What can we say about Donald Trump? It's just when you think things can't get any more bizarre, they tend to get a little more bizarre each and every day, and you wonder when it's going to bottom out. But look, it's the reality is this: is that at what point do we transition from, well, he's just joking or he's just going for shock factor, to this guy's serious and we need to figure it out, and we need to enter some dialogue or do something in order to deal with what is becoming an unnerving situation. When you've got the next president, the president-elect, who's going to be inaugurated January 20th, continuing to talk about annexing Canada as the 51st state, and then joining that with using terms like economic basically warfare is what he's threatening here. Chaos, economic chaos. You have to take it seriously at some point. And then the question has to be answered or needs to be asked, what can we do to retaliate? Let's suggest that he's serious. What ammunition do we have? Now, politicians can act aghast and whatever, egregiously. Justin Trudeau says that not a snowball's chance in hell that would make Canada, that would motivate Canada to become part of the United States. But listen, again, as mentioned, if economic strife is rampant in the country, and if the United States and Donald Trump wants to create economic chaos, then you never know what can happen, because desperation leads to desperate moves. That's the nature of society. And the talking points that the Trump administration has is basically, we have been laggards and we have been the benefactors of the United States for decades and decades and decades. That we only exist and we only have any largesse or bounty because of the United States. Willing to agree to have an unbalanced economic relationship with us. That is the message that Donald Trump has disseminated into the United States, and it's gained a lot of traction. I listened to some podcasts out of the United States, and they are buying in hook, line, and sinker to this narrative that we are somehow laggards. And well, when it comes to military spending, perhaps there's a good argument to be made for that. Not perhaps, there is. We have fallen well short of our commitments to 2% per GDP for our NATO commitment. But listen, I don't know the intricacies of the trade relationship nearly as well as many people do, and we're trying to get a hold of our first guest to talk about this, Moshe Lander from Concordia University, because I want to talk about the trade imbalance. How imbalanced is it? And what leverage do we have? Premier Doug Ford's talking about cutting off power to the eastern seaboard parts of the United States. Will he carry through with that? I don't know. Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, says that she's not interested in cutting energy exports into the United States. We have softwood lumber, of course, which has been long controversial. We have precious minerals and other natural resources that the United States needs for much of their manufacturing. But when it comes to the ability to wait each other out and having time on their hands, I would dare say that we are much more reliant on the United States than they are on us. And if in fact Donald Trump is serious about this and through executive orders can establish these tariffs of 25% or more, perhaps that's just the beginning. I mean, look, when this all started, I was among those who just kind of blew this off and fluffed it off, saying, it's just Trump. Trump being Trump, the art of the deal, whatever. But on a daily basis, and he continues to talk about this, and not only Canada, of course, Greenland, wants to annex Greenland, professes to be in negotiations, some form of negotiations with Denmark. The Panama Canal, which, of course, the United States built many, many decades ago. And has immense commercial strategic importance. Donald Trump in the United States set their sight on the Panama Canal. And look, how serious can we take this guy, or should we be taking this guy? And how much support do you think he's getting in the United States? And what once was thought to be absurd is no longer looking to be absurd. It's looking to become somewhat reality. I mean, we could never have imagined even a short amount of time ago, the president of the United States to be talking in these terms. Or the president-elect. He's not the president yet, but he's going to be in a very short amount of time. So the question that I'm asking you, I'm going to ask you, when we open the phone lines between noon and 1 today, one of the questions will be, how serious should we be taking Donald Trump? Do you take him at his word? Is he serious about this? Does he mean business when it comes to annexing Canada through economic strife? Basically, economic warfare is what he's proposing here. Call it a war. It is a war. And do you think that he has some legitimacy on behalf of the United States to want to broker a better deal for the U.S.? Do you agree with him in that we have been the benefactors of an imbalanced trade relationship for far too long, and he says that they've been subsidizing Canada to the tunes of hundreds of billions of dollars and providing protection through the military and the NATO agreements? Or do you think that it's much more nuanced than that, much more complicated than that, and an affront to democracy and an affront to a world leader? Is this disgraceful behavior, perhaps? What are your thoughts on all of this? And would you have some interest in actually becoming a member of the United States? Again, I blew this off. I did. I tried to blow this off as not being reality, as being ridiculous. And I think I said it on the show, but I'm starting to think that you never know with Trump. You just never know. And maybe that's part of his thing is being unpredictable. Well, we know that it is, right? Because when you're unpredictable and you seem a bit unhinged, that makes everybody nervous. So is this the way that we want the President of the United States to operate? Unhinged and unpredictable? I think it's a definitely a strange situation we're living in here. And add to all of that, of course, is what's happening politically here in Canada. The timing could not be worse, because we have a government which is non-functioning at this point, basically a defunct parliament is what it is. Not basically, it is defunct. For all intents and purposes, the government doesn't exist anymore. We have an executive branch still in Justin Trudeau, but what powers does he have? Does Donald Trump take Justin Trudeau seriously? I would say no, he does not. Now, you could say that's good or for bad or right or wrong, but it's the reality. He does not take him seriously. And we have a neutered government, an dysfunctional government, at a time when January 20th is fast approaching, and we need to get our act together. And some are calling for the parliament to be recalled and somehow come forward with some type of approach which is nonpartisan, non-confrontational, and unified, a unified approach to deal with this. And I think it's an opportunity, perhaps, for Pierre Poilievre, and I'm probably being very naive when I say this, but for Pierre Poilievre and Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau and Yves-François Blanchet to get together and say, we need a unified approach on how to deal with this, and get together with the premiers, get everybody together and have a Canada unified approach, nonpartisan. But that will never happen because political leaders wouldn't dare do that, because Pierre Poilievre would see that as he would fear that he's being seen as weak. And if Justin Trudeau made some progress with a unilateral, or rather with a unified approach, a Team Canada approach, then, well, my gosh, we can't have that, because then people might actually not hate Justin Trudeau as much. And we got to keep that hate going, folks. We got to keep that hate stirred up. And conversely, the same thing with Trudeau and their attack on Poilievre and their endless attack on all that is conservative. So we are very, very neutered right now as a country when it comes to dealing with this. A perfect storm. Now, if we had a solid government with a good track record, and we didn't have a housing crisis and a homelessness crisis and an affordability crisis and all kinds of domestic issues and challenges that we're dealing with in this country, right across the country, in all provinces and territories. If not for that, we would be in a much better position to try and deal with this, but it's not the case. It's the worst case scenario. An unpredictable, apparently unhinged president of the United States who has immense support, extremely popular in the United States, of course, not with everybody, I get that, polarizing as it can be. So you've got that, coupled with what the political situation is here in Canada, which couldn't be worse. It's a perfect storm for chaos. That's what we're dealing with right now. So what should we do next? That's the other question that I'm going to ask you. How should Trudeau proceed here? Recall Parliament? I don't know. I don't have any answers. I don't, but I do know that we're in a situation that is desperate right now. Because even the 25% tariffs, let's say that that's all that Trump does on all imports into the United States from Canada, I don't know, I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but I would say that it would have a crippling impact on much of the economy. Now, what's the scenario if, in fact, let's say in a bizarro world that Canada became the 51st state because let's say that these sanctions are imposed and our economy crumbles and we, out of desperation, turn to the U.S. because they're promising to swoop in and save us economically and socially and all that. Well, there are many, many industries that would just like dominoes would collapse because they would no longer be protected. With the airlines being one of them. I mean, there are many industries. Broadcasting, all the telecoms, that whole industry would be open to the United States and all of the big players, and they would. I mean, it would change the landscape, our economic and social landscape, forever here in this country. So I don't know, folks. Maybe I'm off base here. Maybe Trump is just scaring us. He's being that big bad guy south of the border, and when all is said and done, just bluster. I don't know. I want to get your take on it. I want to find out what you think about all of this. What do you think about all of this? And, of course, you can talk about the ongoing issue in Ottawa, as I mentioned, with the state of flux with the Liberal Party and their leadership race, which is unofficially started. I don't know if anybody's officially entered the race yet, but it's certainly unofficially started. Do you like any of the candidates? Anybody is drawing your attention that you think, yeah, that might be a good choice? Maybe it's Christy Clark, maybe it's Mark Carney, maybe it's none of the above. And do you think that the Liberals have any hope at all, any chance at all of resurrecting their political fortunes in the next election, which it looks like it's going to be the spring? And what about, Pierre Poilievre? Have you changed your position on Pierre Poilievre? Because the basic attack from the Liberals is, yeah, we're dysfunctional right now, and we got our problems. But we're still better than the alternative of the big, bad, scary Pierre Poilievre. That's basically what their message is. So, yeah, just some thoughts of mine. I've got some other things in the pile as well. We will open the phone lines between noon and 1. Dr. John Gillis, and house calls will be by between 11 and 12. As always, I'd like to thank Vanessa Vandeness on the other side of the glass to the control boards. Doing a fine job as always. Thanks for tuning in and listening. When we come back, I'm going to have a chat about all of this and the fact that the G7, add to all of the turmoil, is coming to Canada this year. David Perry, when we come back. All right, happened to see the Bob Dylan biopic, by the way. Just thought I'd mention that. Obviously, that iconic Dylan tune right there, and a complete unknown, and it is absolutely a must-watch in my opinion, whether you're a Dylan fan or not. Fantastic. So there's my plug for the movie. Absolutely loved it. All right, David Perry joins us, President and CEO of the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. David, thanks for joining the show.
Good morning to you.
All right, so oh my, what times we're living in, right? I mean, initially I wanted to talk to you about the G7 in 2025 coming to Canada, and we'll get to that, but the state of flux in this country politically at a time when what's going on in the United States, it's a perfect storm right now for chaos, is it not?
Yeah, I think if anything, you're understating it. We've got a deeply unpopular prime minister who's prorogued parliament and whose own caucus doesn't want him to remain in the job. A leadership race for the governing party that has yet to start, but essentially needs to be completed before the end of the third week of March. Meanwhile, the new administration in the United States takes office in a week and a half, and even without being in office yet, causing a pretty significant amount of disruption.
All right, so what I guess can be done? The premiers are uniting here, and that's a good thing. And the prime minister is going to meet with the premiers to try and develop some unified approach here. What trade missions? What proactively can Canada do right now?
I think there's a whole number of things that we could do. I mean, I think unfortunately we were a little late starting at all of this. I think a lot of the Trump agenda was relatively foreseeable, not some of the specifics, the 51st state comments, the comments about Greenland or Panama, but certainly the enthusiasm for tariffs had been widely telegraphed well in advance. So I think part of what we should be doing on that front is engaging in business sector, workers groups, labor unions, both sides of the border, to make sure people understand the implications of these measures, particularly the implications to the United States, because depending on how these things could get applied, there could be really consequential negative economic impacts in the U.S. as well as the ones obviously that we'd experience here. So that's some of the stuff we could be doing on the tariff front, and I think tied into a view to what we would be looking for under what I think at this point seems to be a pretty certain renegotiation of the new NAFTA Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement. But beyond that, I mean, there's another set of issues that have been identified related to the border security, how tightly Canada is monitoring, patrolling our border, looking at exports to the United States. There were some initiatives that were put forward in the now failed fall economic statement by the current government to enhance border security. I think we need to, with haste, look at mechanisms to increase what we're doing to patrol the Canada-U.S. border and reassure the incoming administration that we're taking those issues more seriously than we're perceived to have been in the past.
Okay, so look, how serious do you think look, you can only speculate, I suppose, and that's all we're doing is speculating at this point, but how serious do you think we should be taking Trump with all this when he uses terms like economic strife and whatever vernacular he's using? Pretty militant language here. What are your thoughts?
Well, if you take the experience from his first administration, I think you got to take all these things seriously, both because the economic and other impacts to Canada are really consequential if they go ahead, but also because while he doesn't always get around to the specific initiatives, the Mexicans didn't pay for the border wall with Mexico, as an example, they still undertook a period of construction of a border wall. So I think you got to take the direction seriously and act as though it's going to be coming. And certainly, I think, given the widespread support that he's expressed and some of the other people in his orbit have expressed for things like tariffs as a policy instrument, we have to consider that at least direction, if not the specifics, the exact amount, whether or not there'd be certain exceptions, et cetera. But the idea that the U.S. would be imposing tariffs, including on Canada, we have to take that as seriously as a heart attack.
Okay, the G7 to the what I reached out to you to talk about initially, the Canada set to preside over the G7 in 2025, leading a forum of 7 of the world's most advanced economies at a time of political instability, as we're talking about. So what are your thoughts, I guess, on the G7, which includes the United States? How important are these types of organizations at this time? Perhaps more so, perhaps less?
I think a lot of it depends on whether or not I can go ahead. Not number one, whether or not I can go ahead with the normal expected membership, and then the third point would be a lot of it depends on what you make of it and what effort you put into it. So, in normal times, of which I guess we're not in, but in normal times, it's a forum of the seven of the most important world economies, where you get the heads of government together in a meeting. As a colleague of mine pointed out, if the Canadian Prime Minister can't find something useful to get out of some FaceTime directly with the American President, they should probably be reconsidering their station in life. So it's an opportunity to come to agreement, articulate some common purpose, but I think more importantly, have a chance to get dedicated time in conventional circumstances with some of, if not the most important world leaders for Canada. But I guess the current circumstances here complicate that immensely. Depending on how you game out the electoral circumstances in Canada, we will have either a very recently elected Canadian leadership team. So that presents some challenges in terms of putting together a programming, given that the outline of the types of topics that G7's discussed would probably be shaped quite differently under a Conservative government. I think the other thing to potentially consider is whether or not President Trump feels like attending these kinds of things is the kind of thing that he needs to devote his time to. Under the first Trump administration, he spent lots of time, I think, being told by people that are part of the establishment system that he had to, as American president, attend a whole number of different functions internationally, that he didn't always convey a lot of enthusiasm to be at, to understate it a little bit. I'm not entirely confident this time that he'll feel compelled to do some of those things. So if the U.S. president doesn't attend, then that's a different kind of ball game. And I think the third piece I'd touch on is the agenda for this is going to have to be updated. So just looking through the statement from the most recent 2024 G7 summit, lots of discussion in the communique. So I'm going to rhyme off a few things here. Discussion of the Sustainable Development Goals, global food security and enhancing climate resilience, gender equality, the triple crisis of climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. There's a number of other things in here, including some wider international peace and security initiatives that I think might be more supported by the incoming administration, but certainly the ones I rhymed off to you there don't really seem to be fully resonant with the agenda that President Trump-elect is putting forward to this point in time.
Do you think they're resonant to the electorate, to people here in Canada as well, or do you think that people are pivoting in an affordability crisis?
If you look at public polling, no, not all of those. But I think more importantly, those are not all the key issues that the leader of the official opposition, Mr. Poilievre, has been promoting, and so would not be the kinds of initiative that I would expect the G7 leadership team and the Canadian diplomatic bureaucracy to be proposing if there is a change in government and the Conservatives do take power.
Yeah. So look, and when all is said and done, it's affordability is front and center for people. If you can't pay your bills and you can't buy a house and all of these things that you were talking about that are on the agenda for the G7 are important, and I think that most people recognize that they're important. But it all gets overshadowed when you can't pay your own bills and you can't. And you feel as though that your streets aren't safe, and not to espouse talking points or from the Conservatives, but the reality is those things will take precedent, will they not?
That would certainly be my expectation for those exact reasons that you outlined. I think at least my interpretation of the polls is that a large part of the reason why the Conservatives are polling where they are is that they have spent most of their time and attention, primarily from their leader, focused on those types of issues that you've mentioned, which are the ones that Canadians are most attuned to. So to carve out a couple of days to go to Alberta to have a conversation about biodiversity loss, not to diminish the importance of that issue, but compared to those other things, I have a difficult time seeing people carving out the time to have that conversation. However, I mean, there is that G7 forum is and has been in the past place where you can have a conversation about international security. You could talk about things like has been done in the past about the way to introduce and benefit from, including from a productivity and wealth creation point of view, artificial intelligence. So there are different mechanisms I think you could have that kind of a forum that is tied into issues that Canadians are concerned about, that Americans are concerned about, and that the wider leadership of the G7 membership, newly reinvigorated and reconfigured, is concerned about. It's probably going to be a bit of a change in the agenda if it still goes forward.
David, always appreciate your time and your insight. Thanks so much, and we'll do it again.
Great to talk to you. All
right, take care. David Perry, President and CEO of the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. Dry January and the GST break. How are they impacting bars and restaurants? That when we come back. All right, dry January and the GST break. How are they affecting bars and restaurants? Joining us to talk about all of this is Janick Cormier from Restaurants Canada. Hello.
Hi, Todd. How are you doing today?
Well, you? Hello. Sorry, you broke up there. We got you?
I'm back.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so first off, dry January. This is something that is a relatively new phenomenon. I don't know how long officially it's been going on, but it seems to be picking up momentum. How many of your members are not exact, but just kind of anecdotally are participating in dry January?
Well, a lot of people are participating in dry January. I think the phenomenon, as you said, is getting bigger and bigger each year. For us, our members are adapting. Obviously, alcohol sales normally account for 10 to 30% of revenues in restaurants, 40 to 70% of revenues in pubs. So our members are adapting. I myself have noticed some mocktail menus out on the tables, more non-alc beer being offered, more non-alc wine. And so our members are taking advantage of the trend and trying to offer some non-alcoholic beverages for those who partake in dry January.
All right. Economically, does this help or hurt your business or your members?
Well, unfortunately, January is probably the slowest month of the year for our industry. So this trend is hitting at a time where our profits are usually not as high as we would hope. As I mentioned, alcohol sales tend to account for 10 to 30% of revenue. So if people aren't buying that glass of wine or that cocktail, it does hurt the bottom line. But as I said, our members are adapting. They are offering different non-alcoholic options to consumers to bridge the gap in this very dark month of the year.
Yeah, for sure. What about the GST break? How's that been playing out?
We have yet to have hard data on it. We're looking forward to getting it from our members. But anecdotally, we've been hearing from restaurants that they're seeing an uptake in reservations and sales compared to what they would expect for this time of year. So it's going well. It is positive for our industry. Quite frankly, we wish it would be made permanent. In our opinion, food is food, and taxing food is just wrong. People need to eat, and making food more expensive with taxes, bad public policy. So if we had one wish this year, it would be to make this permanent.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody's floating that idea. Are they? Are you hearing that politically from anybody that's suggesting that?
We are suggesting that, but of course it's something that we have to discuss with the federal government going forward. We're very happy, very pleased to have been included in the tax break for even though it's temporary. But we would like to see this be made permanent.
All right, economically, how are things going when it comes to restaurants and bars? We know that bankruptcy has been a challenge. There's been lots of challenges economically with paying back loans.
Yes, exactly. Yep. I don't think it's a secret that the pandemic hit our industry quite hard. Those who survived are still in survival mode, unfortunately. The latest numbers we have is 53% of our members are either losing money or breaking even.
Wow.
And so it is a difficult time. The cost of living is hitting us in different ways. Our cost of operating has gone up tremendously, whether it's the cost of food or utilities or rent. And consumers have less spending power, right? So they're spending less in restaurants. They're maybe not having that second glass of wine. They might not be ordering dessert, which is why this GST holiday has come in a great time. Instead of giving that 15% to the government, that 15% will stay with our members. They'll have that second glass of wine. They might be ordering that dessert that they normally wouldn't have. And so it has been great for our members.
Okay, 53% losing money. Those numbers are pretty staggering. I would think
Yes.
that would be a deterrent for people for entering the restaurant industry. What about new people, new business owners who decide they want to take a chance on this industry? What are the numbers?
I don't have the numbers right in front of me, Todd, but what I can say is that we are optimistic that 2025 will be the turning point where restaurants stop surviving and start thriving finally. We are seeing, new restaurants popping up here and there, but unfortunately, as I mentioned, we are seeing closures and bankruptcies. The 53% that are operating at a loss or just breaking even, that's up 12% from pre-pandemic. So we're still very much in a challenging time as an industry, but we're hopeful that 2025 will be the turning point where we start thriving again and seeing more people come through our doors.
Yeah, because obviously your industry is so linked with tourism and hospitality, and look, it's inextricably linked. You cannot have a vibrant, robust tourism industry without a robust, vibrant restaurant and bar industry. They go hand in hand.
That's exactly, and especially here in Atlantic Canada, people come here for our beaches and our seafood. So if we have no way to provide them with the seafood that they come here to eat, we will see less tourism dollars. Our industry accounts for $114 billion annually in Canada. It's not small. We're the fourth largest employer. So you're totally right. If we want the tourism industry to thrive, we need the restaurant industry to also thrive.
All right. So that said, what action items do you think? You already mentioned the GST you'd like to see eliminated permanently, but what other action items do you think government could play here? What role does government play in this?
So depending on the level of government, provincially, we would like to see better wholesale rates for alcohol, as that is a pretty significant revenue stream for our industry. If our members could buy alcohol for a little bit less, then the profit margins would be greater. We're also looking at lowering the CPP-EI premiums for employers and employees. Any small things the government can help us with will be a greater help for our industry and help our members overcome this dark period that we're in currently.
Okay, Janick, listen, I appreciate your time. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, take care. Janick Cormier with Restaurants Canada. Canada's 100 highest paid CEOs earned $13.2 million on average in 2023, according to a recent report. We'll talk about this when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, before I chat with my next guest, we've got 2 pairs of Mooseheads tickets to give away. The Mooseheads hosting Drummondville tomorrow night. So if you'd like a pair of tickets, again, we get 2 pairs of tickets to give away. Be caller 5 and 7 now at 902-405-6000. Again, callers 5 and 7 for 2 pairs of tickets to see the Mooseheads hosting Drummondville tomorrow, 902-405-6000. And obviously, good luck. All right, Canada's 100 highest paid CEOs earned $13.2 million on average in 2023 from salaries, bonuses, and other compensation, according to the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Joining us to talk about all of this and break it all down, David Macdonald, senior economist at the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives and author of the report Company Men CEO Pay in Canada 2023. David, thanks for joining us.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
All right. So I guess, first of all, why, it may seem obvious or evident, but why is it important that people know this information?
This is a question that goes to the heart of how economic
Sorry, I lost the guest there. My apologies. All right, I'll read a bit of it while we get David back on the air, or back on the line. Vanessa works away at that. It was the third biggest year for CEO pay since the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives began tracking the data in 2007, but a decline after the 2021 and 2022 broke records. Factors leading to the decline include lower profits in 2023 and workers making wage gains after the most recent bout of inflation. The Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives calculates that by 10:54 a.m. on January 2nd, the average CEO on the list had made $62,000, the average annual income for a Canadian worker. So how does that make you feel, folks? That by 10:54 on the second day of January, these CEOs made more money than the average worker will make in the entire year. For some people, that's a sobering, startling statistic. All right, we're going to get David Macdonald back on the line here in a sec, as soon as Vanessa locks him in. There we go. David, my apologies. Very, very apologetic for that. So, again, why is this important information for people to know about?
Yeah, I mean, the real question is, how do we distribute economic resources? When the economy does well, when your company does well that you work for, who benefits from that? You know, does everybody see a raise, or is it just the folks at the top that see a raise when things go well? And also when we see crises, who hurts when we see crises? Like when we saw the inflationary crisis, 2021-22, as well as the COVID-19 crisis in 2000. Did CEOs do well? Did they do badly? It's worth looking at executive compensation, not just to say that CEOs make more, which they obviously do, and they should. But the question is, how much more do they make than the average worker, and how much has that ratio changed over time? These are all, I think, important questions for folks.
What can the average person do about this besides be upset or it strikes a nerve with people, I think, for obvious reasons and rightfully so? But what I suppose some people might just shrug their shoulders and say, "What? Nothing I can do about this." So again, back to the point of why have the conversation? Why is it necessary? And what's the end game? I guess what can people, when all is said and done, do about it besides be upset?
Yeah, I mean, can individuals do something about it? No, I don't think so. But I think that it's worth understanding that it's happening. In 2020. A lot of these big companies, so the CEOs that were on the top 100 list, went to governments and said, look, help us out. Please give us additional money because, business is bad. Profits are down. We're not going to make our bonuses otherwise unless you give us some money. And that's exactly what happened. So the federal government ponied up the wage subsidy program, and half of the top CEOs were actually part of the wage subsidy program, not the CEOs, but the companies themselves were accessing the program. And so I think it's worth saying, look, when there are big programs like this, we need to know that these CEOs are going to take bonuses out of that. And we need to be much more severe in terms of saying this is not for CEOs to enrich themselves on. These are funds to help workers try to stay employed. The other thing, too, I think that, we often say, well, we shouldn't be going out governing individual companies. And I think that's probably true. But that's not to say we shouldn't be closing tax loopholes. And there's been there's been a couple of victories over the last couple of years, closing some pretty major tax loopholes for executives and CEOs, so that we're not further subsidizing these outrageous pay packages.
All right. So tax loopholes, give me some meat on the bone. What can you tell us about how the taxation system is not leveling the playing field, but helping not tilt the scales quite so badly?
Yeah, there's been some real improvements. Two things that we've been asking for some time actually came into play over the last couple of years. CEOs are paid very differently from average workers. They would receive a salary. They generally receive a salary of just over $1 million. That's a very small part of their overall compensation. Most of the money they make comes in the form of bonuses, either cash bonuses or stock options, or just being paid in stock from the company they work for. What's interesting is that stock options prior to 2021 got a huge tax rebate in addition to the fact that they're paid almost exclusively to executives of big companies. And so that was capped, that the tax exemption they got on if you were paid in stock options, which isn't going to be the experience of most Canadians. That was capped in 2021. And we've actually seen in the data now a big decline in the utilization of stock options for executives. probably in part as a result of this sort of fairer taxation that comes as a result. The other big change that we saw just in this past, in 2024, just last year, was taxing capital gains more like working income. And that was announced in the spring budget, implemented in June. And as a result of that single change, there are 5 CEOs on this list that will owe $800 million more in taxes, which is just an incredible amount of money. Shows the insane wealth concentration in Canada. It also shows how concentrated the losers are, in essence, for this change in capital gains, despite receiving a lot of attention. Now, this capital gains change is in jeopardy as a result of the prorogation of Parliament and may well never go into play. What that means is these 5 CEOs will save themselves $800 million in taxes as a result of this cancellation.
All right. Could the argument be made that if, in fact, you make it too punitive for this top talent, and they'll simply go to other jurisdictions, other companies, other global companies, and therefore lose talent? What? I'm sure you've heard that argument before. What's your response?
I mean, this actually goes to the title of the report this year, and it's something that we looked at in a fair amount of detail. One of the justifications for these outrageous pay packages is that the companies themselves face insane international competition for CEOs. And so you got to get the best CEO. And if you don't, get one of these gods of commerce, then your company's going to fail or it's going to do badly or something like that. That's an interesting story. It's a nice fable, but that's actually not how Canadian CEOs are hired. The reality is much more mundane. 76% of the top CEOs did not get hired directly into the CEO chair. They worked their way up. They, on average, spent 21 years with the company, so about half their careers with the company that they're at. These are company men. They get hired in about halfway through their careers and work their way up to the CEO chair. Now, that's not necessarily a bad way to hire. It's not as exciting as this idea that there's some insane competition. But it just goes to show that folks get there because their value is in the connection to the company they work for. They know the company. They know the business line. They know the politicians who are friendly to the company. They know the regulators who are friendly to the company. That's their value. And so this idea that folks are being poached into these top roles is an interesting story, but it's just not the reality. The reality is these are company men working their way up. And so this idea that they're going to move to another company or move to another jurisdiction doesn't make any sense in that context, because their value is in working for that company, having worked there for decades. And that's how they get to the CEO chair at the end of their careers, is by working there for decades, not because they're being poached.
Ultimately, the compensation package is determined by a board, I'm assuming?
Well, it's usually determined by a subset of the board. Yeah. And so the board would strike a compensation committee. And so they would hire a consultant, say, how should we compensate our execs? And the consultant would say, well, you're such a great company and your execs deserve to be in the top quarter of all execs. And so if the consultant says you're kind of a lousy company and your execs deserve a pay cut, well, that person's not going to get rehired the following year. But in any event, so that person says, look, your execs need to be in the top quarter of all execs. We'll take the list published by the CCPA or whoever else and make sure that your CEO is in the top quarter. Well, of course, everybody can't be in the top quarter, except, if they try to be, then you see ever increasing levels of pay. And that's in essence what we see. Now, of course, the board members in the seat, they know each other, right? Like, it's not like these are strangers. They work together. Oftentimes, CEOs will recruit people for the board. They know each other, right? This isn't, it's not that the CEO is deciding their own pay package. But the CEO can actively be recruiting folks for the board. And those board members are themselves executives of other companies in most cases, not in the same sector, but in other sectors. And so this is a group of folks that totally buy into the fact that these execs should be making $13 million a year, which is in part what makes it very difficult, even if you wanted to, as a shareholder, to constrain CEO pay as a shareholder who, even if you had a big stake in a company, it's very difficult actually to control compensation for your exec.
Yeah, I guess, is it cultural in some way? Is there a culture here that's embedded?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's a culture. It's very much based on this idea of bonuses. So this is worth pointing. I mean, we talked about this a bit earlier. Salaries make up about $1 million of CEO compensation on average, a little over $1 million this year. But it's not that important. And the salary component has been fairly consistent actually over time. It's the bonuses that's really driving this difference. And the idea behind the bonuses is that it hypothetically rewards merit. So if the company does well, then the CEO sees huge bonuses. And this was absolutely the case in the inflation years, 2021, 2022. Profits went through the roof when inflation went through the roof because you raise prices, right? You get to raise prices, which is just a clear boost to your profits. Certainly it angers consumers, but if everybody's doing it, why not you do it as well? And, you see huge bonuses. So the one way is certainly true. If, things go really well, executive compensation goes through the roof. Things can go badly, obviously, for companies. And that is exactly what happened in 2020 during the pandemic. And the idea there is maybe bonuses get totally wiped out and the CEO is forced to live on only $1 million that year. What actually happened in 2020 is, I think, far more illustrative of what's going on, is that in that year, half of the top CEOs either just changed how the bonuses were calculated to make sure they got them anyway, or the compensation committees did, and or they applied to receive federal government support through the wage subsidy program to ensure that revenues stayed up, and so they were paid the bonuses in any event. So when you have a system where it's in great times you get paid the bonuses, in bad times your bonuses still get paid, you're going to end up with a system where the bonuses keep going up year after year and are going to outpace workers' wage gains that have been much slower over that period.
Very interesting, David. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate your time, of course.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. David Macdonald, Senior Economist at the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives and author of the report, Company Men, CEO in Pay in Canada. House Calls with Dr. John Gillis when we come back.
Dr. John, you're my medicine man. Dr. John, you're my medicine
All right, you heard it. It's time for House Calls with Dr. John Gillis. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. If you've got a health-related question or concern, 902-405-6000. Dr. Gillis, with a wealth of knowledge and experience, will do his best to help you out. 902-405-6000. Dr. Gillis, Happy New Year to you, sir.
Happy New Year. You doing well?
Doing all right, man. Hanging in there, doing okay. The Leafs are on a bit of a roll. I think they won 5 or 6 in a row. Not bad, eh?
Yeah, I broke my curse. I've seen them win 3 in a row in person now, so I was 0 for 8. So I was being banned from the arena, but I think the curse is broken.
Yeah, are you one of those fans that shows up about 15 minutes into the first period, or are you one of those guys that's in his seat well before the game starts?
Oh, I like to be in the seat at puck drop. I'm not one of these corporate morons in Toronto who stay down below and then yell at you for cheering when they score.
Yeah,
so no.
Exactly. Okay, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Have you been working any shifts at the ER in Dartmouth?
Yeah, I was there Monday. It was a disaster as usual. Came on to 45 to be seen, and seeing people that have been there for 12 hours, and I was talking to someone about this last night. I mean, I saw someone at the very end of the shift who had what on the surface was a very minor rash, but didn't end up being something minor, and I'm glad the guy didn't leave, but other people who had been there that long or even less time did leave. And this is what we risk, right? People who have something, going on that's, not minor, they get frustrated or they leave, or, they got to care for kids or, an elderly parent, or they got to work. It's frustrating, for those people and for us, and people get mad at us. They're like, why am I waiting this long? I'm like, doing my best, bud. Doing my best.
How many people are I guess, I don't know if homeless is the right way of putting it, but how many people do you see that are just simply homeless and walking in there and in need because of their circumstances, I guess?
Yeah, we see a fair bit of that. We see people coming in at night because it's cold. I saw a gentleman on Monday night who, had been beat up. But, I really think he was there because he was cold and had no place to go. And you get used to it to a degree, but it's still heartbreaking when you see it and you sit down next to somebody and they tell you a story and they tell you about themselves, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and the ER staff is in an extremely vulnerable situation there, and I know that the vast majority of people obviously go in there and don't cause ruckus or aren't physically intimidating, but I'm sure that you get some of that, right? And there are limited resources when it comes to security, and how much of a concern is it? A growing concern about safety of staff there?
Yeah, I mean, I worry about it. I see it from time to time. People are in mental health crisis or they're impaired on something, and you're right. Then add some frustration. People are waiting, and nothing serious to date, but you certainly worry about it.
I'll bet. 902-405-6000. Give us a call if you'd like to chat with Dr. John Gillis. He is standing by and ready to do his best to address your healthcare concern. 902-405-6000. On the ER story, this on the CBC website this morning, a new report on emergency department closures in the province suggests some progress is happening, but a closer look reveals that the province's biggest problem sites are getting worse, and rural areas are impacted the most, and I think for obvious reasons, staffing challenges. What I guess when it comes to the prioritizing ERs, and it comes down to it really comes down to having enough staff. If you don't have staff, you can't function. It's really simple as that, is it not?
Yeah, no, it's yeah. I mean, you can't be open if you don't have staff, and then the staff that are experienced to handle the shit show. Can we say that on the radio?
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
It's tough to walk into a emergency department that's under siege if you don't have the experience and the training. And we're so fortunate to have such great medics and nurses that do their best every day. But increasingly we've seen senior nurses, people have been around a long time, either just leave the profession or go somewhere else, do something else. And we have increasingly putting a burden on people with less experience, and they're up to the task. They're stepping in and doing it, but it's hard to lose these people with years of experience just because of their judgment and their ability to do the work. And it's both of those things. It's total staffing, but it's also the who's there and what experience they have.
Yeah, and I'm sure if you're an experienced healthcare provider such as you or nurses or whomever, and you're working shift work and you're working under stressful situations, and people can look at other opportunities within the health network or elsewhere in the province or on the continent or wherever to go. And I'm sure that's a temptation if you can improve your quality of life. And who would blame anybody for that, right?
Well, I mean, it's already happening, and that's what's happening with a lot of our more experienced nurses is that they've taken 9-to-5 jobs. As demand goes up, this demand in community clinics and in the hospitals with a better lifestyle, or I'll go to New Brunswick and they'll pay me double, or I'll go to Texas and they'll pay me triple and I'm paying half the taxes, that sort of thing. So, that is very much what we're up against, and we're seeing it in the physician community too. I mean, I'm not going to lie and say it hasn't crossed my mind. I'm like, what am I doing here at 3:00 in the morning?
Sure.
I still enjoy it. I still feel a sense of duty to the system, and I will continue to do that work. But there are people who have left, and there are people who are becoming increasingly frustrated by it.
Well, and also not to take away from your efforts, because they're appreciated, but you get away from it. It's not your fault. It's not your only gig, right? Is working in the ER.
Well, that's it, and that this is the people that are in there doing 16 shifts a month. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
They're warriors. The docs, the nurses, and the medics were working that much, but we face and we risk burnout if this continues.
Indeed. Okay, folks, listen, we get some open lines for you. Give us a call, 902-405-6000. If you'd like to chat with Dr. Gillis, he'll do his best to address your question, 902-405-6000. While we await some calls, I wanted to get your take on the fact that I guess some good news. The province is reporting just over 9,000 names have been removed from the list of Nova Scotians waiting for a family doctor. The new list showed 110,000 people are in need of a doctor. The January numbers down from about 9,200 from the numbers released at the beginning of December. Still represent about 10% of the current population of Nova Scotia. So I guess this list, first of all, is this a good metric that we should be using? First of all, do you put a lot of credence into this metric at all, Dr. Gillis?
Look, we don't have a lot of metrics. There are people that don't even bother getting put on the list. There are people that are on the list that have somebody. There are people that are on the list that probably have left the province or have passed away. So it's not perfect, but it is what we have. And like we'll always say, it's a good thing if the list is going down. And as we've talked about many times, it's very complicated. But at the heart of it, as I've said before, is successive governments over many years have not noticed or failed to consider, the changing demographics as population changes, as work patterns change. You're not getting old white guys working 60 hours a week, seeing 50 patients a day anymore, and that's a good thing. Yeah. But you need to, train more people to keep up with that. And the trend towards putting people on salary and taking away the incentive to work, has been a problem. And I think government is finally waking up to that, some folks, some docs or nurse practitioners, what have you, depending on their practice, are best in that environment. But, if you want people to pick up more patients and do more, then incentivize them to do so as you would in any profession.
Right. And the team-based approach as well. Are you an advocate of team-based approach?
Well, I mean, I've talked about this a few times, when you were off. Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's great to have access to different disciplines. It's important if someone needs psychology or physiotherapy, that sort of thing. Where multidisciplinary clinics can fall down is if nobody pays attention to the fact that you actually have to do the work and see a certain number of patients in a day. So, I call it the Cadillac model. If you're in there, you're getting the best service possible. But if a practitioner is only seeing 15, 20 patients a day, and someone else is out there seeing 40 and 50, it's not really helping solve the crisis of demand.
Indeed. Okay, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Give us a call, folks. We've got some room for you. 902-405-6000. House Calls continues when we come back. All right, House Calls with Dr. John Gillis. Give us a buzz, 902-405-6000. That's the way to do it. Again, 902-405-6000. David, hello.
Hi there. I've sort of been experiencing elbow pain sort of on and off for like the last year or two. And it seems to me that it might be tennis elbow. I'm just wondering what you could maybe tell me about that or any thoughts.
Well, do you play tennis?
No, I don't. Yeah. I'm a cook, so I do a lot of lifting with my arm extending, pushing, scraping, pulling, all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, with my arm fully extended, there's kind of like a lump of bone on the bottom, and then there's the elbow bone in the middle, and then the sort of lump of bone on the top, and it's sort of right where that sort of lump of bone is on the top. It's always just sort of very sore and tender and stuff like that. Sort of depending how I sleep can be uncomfortable as well too, kind of thing. But
yeah, so tennis elbow is I think of it as if you have your palm up, your thumb out, the outside of the elbow is what we call the lateral epicondyle. The inside is the medial. So the inflammation of the lateral epicondyle is what we call tennis elbow.
That seems to be where it is. Yeah, my palm up. It's sort of that outside kind of like joint, I guess, or sort of lump of bone or whatever, for lack of a better word. But
yeah, so it's obviously they came up with the name for a reason from playing tennis, but it's from repetitive motion, repetitive strain from doing different things. The treatment is rest, which obviously is hard to do when you're working. Anti-inflammatories, sometimes a little brace can help with mobility. Some local treatment, physiotherapy, laser, acupuncture, ultrasound, some of these things can help. And failing that, sometimes we put some cortisone into those areas. I've done that a few times this week. So that's sort of the range of treatment that you'd be looking at. And, maybe a starting point would be to talk to a physiotherapist about not only some treatment, but, what are you doing mechanically that's causing this? Is it your backhand? Is it your first serve? Is it losing the Wimbledon final? So.
Yeah, that was a heartbreaker for sure. Okay. I guess the sort of final question would be is that something, if we do manage to sort of address it or whatever, will it sort of go away, or is it kind of always going to be a lifelong thing where it's, weak or vulnerable or potentially just sore?
Yeah, if I keep kicking you in the shin, your shin's going to hurt. If I stop kicking you in the shin, your shin's going to stop hurting. This is the type of thing that, you try to manage it. So if you stop doing whatever you're doing with your arm, it's not going to hurt, but that's hard to do. So what we try to do is evaluate mechanics to see if we can figure out what's irritating it to try and minimize it, and then look at treatment. Ideally, by knocking it down and changing mechanics a bit, you can get rid of it. But often it's something that has to be managed and may come up and down depending on the tennis season.
Okay, yeah, right on. All right, yeah, more exercise in the off season, I guess. So.
Okay, thanks, bud.
Right on, thank you.
Take care. 902-405-6000. Elizabeth, hello.
Yes, good morning and Happy New Year to you both.
You as well.
Dr. Gillis, thank you. Dr. Gillis, I'm 65. I have chronic back pain and nerve pain. Yesterday I was on the treadmill trying to exercise a little bit, and I got a sharp pain in my right knee and developed what I think is a Baker's cyst. I've had pain ever since, and I can barely walk on it. I tried ice, and that didn't seem to work. I can't take anti-inflammatories, and I can't get to see a physiotherapist for weeks. Is there anything I can do for it in the meantime?
Have you tried even simple stuff like high-dose Tylenol?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, so I'd start there. I mean, Tylenol is not an anti-inflammatory. It's safe up to 3 grams a day, which is 6 extra strength. You mentioned ice, and all the usual stuff, keeping it elevated. And you mentioned anti-inflammatories. You can't do that. Getting into physio. A knee brace to help with alignment, depending on how swollen or irritated it is, might help. But I would start with Tylenol and ice, and maybe a bit of mobilization or brace if you have that ability.
Okay, would this take days to go away or weeks?
If I could predict the future, I'd be sitting on a yacht off Grand Cayman, picking football games and smoking stogies at the time.
I got it. Thank you very much.
Okay, good luck, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. That must be one of the more difficult parts of your job, Dr. Gillis, I would think, and I'm sure there's many rewarding aspects to it as well. But people, when they're in discomfort or pain, they just want it to end, and they look to you for to be the bearer of good news. But there are times, and probably you just can't do it, right? Obviously.
Well, I mean, it is hard to predict how people respond. I mean, there are things that we say, look, this should settle down in the next week. But then sometimes people say, well, you told me it was going to be a week, and it's been 2. And you have to try to be careful how you word it. Typically it's this, but it could be longer. And in the noise of 3 a.m. in the ER, sometimes that gets lost. It's why communication is so important. To try and get people as accurate a picture as you can without creating a false hope or narrative. And and a lot of what we do, you see somebody with belly pain, you do some blood work, you examine them. You're playing odds based on knowledge and the data in front of you. So, it is, can I tell you 100% that this is not appendicitis? No, but I'm pick a number. I'm 95% sure it's not, based on your symptoms, your blood work, your exam. But if things change or get worse, you can come back. It's, short of running every single person through a CAT scanner, which we can't do, and wouldn't be right to do for a whole list of reasons, the radiation, everything. You're making the best analysis you can based on what you see in front of you, knowing that most of the time you get it right, but not always. And you have to help people understand that if something changes or worsens or it doesn't get better, that they need to get rechecked.
And you were saying that screening it's often overdone. People just want to say that they want an MRI, they want a CAT scan or whatever, but you have to justify that, and there are a lot of reasons why it shouldn't be. But oftentimes you will dissuade somebody from that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this many times. I think running a pain clinic, I think I ordered maybe 10 MRIs this year.
Yeah.
Because they rarely change management. Now, if you see somebody who has specific symptoms where you think they've got an acute herniated disc that is pressing on a nerve, something that could be surgically corrected, and something has changed, then yeah, it's definitely worth getting a test. Otherwise, I want an MRI just to see. Mm-hmm. Well, I'd like to fly on a private jet to Vegas and stay in the presidential suite at the MGM Grand, but ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. 902-405-6000. If you've got a health-related question or concern, give us a buzz. We've got Dr. Gillis for the next half hour. 902-405-6000. House Calls continues when we come back. All right, so we are having some phone challenges, folks. That's what's going on right now, some phone challenges. So we'll try and reboot the phone system and see what's going on. It's quite a complicated system. It's not like the old school phones where it was a hard wire. It's all computers now. Everything is computers, and that's the way the phone systems work. And when you get software glitches and things don't work exactly as you would hope that they would or they should, then we end up having these challenges. But look, surprisingly, it doesn't happen as much as you think that it would. Actually, you would think that with all that can go wrong with the computer system, that, and as complex as they are, these systems, that they would happen more often. We've got servers in Toronto. We've got systems all over the place. But anyway, it seems as though a simple reboot has corrected our challenge after all, thankfully. 902-405-6000. So now that our phones are back online, give us a buzz at 902-405-6000. House Calls with Dr. John Gillis. Again, 902-405-6000. We had somebody on hold, a couple of people on hold, so give us a call back at 902-405-6000. And by the way, as long as the phone system is working, we will take your calls between noon and 1 a little later today. And something that we can talk about is, you guessed it, Donald Trump and his musings about Canada becoming the 51st state. Is he serious? Should we take this guy at his word at this time? And talking about economic, basically, don't have the right in front of me, but economic warfare, I guess is the term. He didn't say warfare. That's not the terminology that he used. But economic, I guess, hijacking our economy with tariffs. That is quite serious stuff. And I guess the thought process is, if we can paralyze our economy, then perhaps we can be brought to our knees, and suddenly the idea of becoming a 51st state might be something that would be attractive to more Canadians. Anyway, something that we can talk about later on in the show. All right, Dr. John Gillis is by again. It's reached us. Our phone lines are back up and running. So give us a call at 902-405-6000. Again, we had a couple of people on hold before our phone systems tanked. So give us a call back and we'll get you right on. Again, 902-405-6000. Dr. Gillis, we got you loud and clear now?
All good, yeah.
Okay, here we go. So in the meantime, while we wait to get our phone calls back, again, 902-405-6000. Give us a buzz back. We're ready for you now. Dennis sends this via email. Says, I have a pinched nerve in my shoulder, very uncomfortable, numb fingers. Normally every few months it happens. Lately, 4 or 5 days of pain, then all of a sudden it's gone. A couple of days later, it's back. Any thoughts on this from Dennis?
That's pretty general. You have to determine where it's coming from, whether it's actually the shoulder or whether it's the neck. The neck would probably be more likely. You may be feeling it in the shoulder. And then, to determine with some imaging or an exam, if there's anything that can be done to get it to settle down, starting with therapy, starting with medications. It may be an alignment or a posture thing. The scrum collapsed on me 10 years ago, and if I sleep the wrong way, if I bend my neck to the left and sleep that way, my left arm, the inside of it goes numb, just from that old injury. So a lot of it's positional, a lot of it's anatomical. So you need to determine where it's coming from, and then try and fix the posture or the position that's affecting it, and or try to treat it with some therapy or some meds.
Yeah, it's truly amazing how connected the body is, and how you can be experiencing one issue, but where you're experiencing the issue, where you're feeling the pain or the discomfort or whatever it might be, the anomaly, that's not the area that's creating the challenge, and that's the anatomy creates a big challenge, I would think, for diagnosing these things.
Absolutely, yeah. And you have pain in your finger, but it's coming from your neck, and at first glance, it doesn't always make sense to me, and I'm supposed to know this stuff. So, yeah, that's why getting a proper diagnosis is important.
Indeed. 902-405-6000, that is the way to reach us. Again, give us a buzz. We get some time for you, get some room for you as well. 902-405-6000. If you've got a health-related question or concern, Dr. Gillis is awaiting your call. In the meantime, again, we'll revisit some of these stories. New Brunswick health officials have announced an end to the measles outbreak that was declared November 1st. In a news release from the province, they say the outbreak spread to 50 people in the Fredericton area and communities northwest along the St. John River. Most of those infected were 18 or younger. Officials confirmed the last case November 26th. So is this a direct case of people not a reduction in vaccinations, or is there a definitive reason that we can put as to why these things happen?
Yeah, no, I mean that's what it is. It's people getting no vax or not getting, their second vax, and it's not rocket science. I mean, this disease was basically eradicated, and we're seeing it flare up because we had for a variety of reasons, people not getting vaccinated for a while. That problem seems to have largely taken care of itself. I mean, I think cooler heads have prevailed, education has prevailed, but there are still some pockets of resistance there, and it's unfortunate because this is not necessarily benign illness. People can get sick, people can die.
Yeah, and I guess there'd be a boomerang effect as well. People not getting vaccinated or people not having their children vaccinated, you might not see that manifest itself for a number of years. So that's at play as well when it comes to data and it manifesting itself.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, the kids not getting vaccinated might not be affected till they're, in their teens. You might not see it for 10 years later, but you can also see young kids getting sick, and that's the higher risk, of course.
Mm. Okay, this story, again, 902-405-6000. Give us a call, folks, if you'd like to chat with Dr. Gillis. Again, 902-405-6000. Following a sharp rise in cases of walking pneumonia among Canadian children, rates of the infection seem to be dropping, but doctors are now warning families about flu and respiratory viruses, or RSV. So walking pneumonia, what can you tell us about the symptoms and the warning signs for this, first of all?
Yeah, so walking pneumonia is an interesting term. It's sort of a term that is a little bit misused. It's sort of an atypical pneumonia, which can be caused by different things, bacteria and viruses. When we think of a traditional pneumonia, it's a bacteria that causes it growth in a certain part of the lungs and makes people sick. The term walking pneumonia can be, bacteria like mycoplasma, but it can also be an inflammation and an infection of the lungs caused by viruses. So it is important to determine, what we're actually talking about here. And we're seeing a lot of this lately. We're seeing a lot of, as you mentioned, RSV, respiratory syncytial virus around there. It's kicking the crap out of people, making them sick, but, really running them down for a week or more. But we are seeing these atypical bacteria like mycoplasma that do need antibiotics. So it is important to try and determine what we're dealing with and how to best treat it. But the summary of all that is we're surrounded in all of it right now. COVID, influenza, RSV, adenovirus, regular pneumonias, atypical pneumonias. So again, the summary of all that is take care of yourself. If you're coughing, please wear a mask. And this is not a COVID conspiracy theory by the Illuminati and Justin Trudeau. This is common sense. If you're sick, don't cough on other people. And it still drives me crazy. I'm on a plane on Monday, and the guy behind me was just hacking all over hell and creation. Not wearing a mask and just didn't give a shit. And it's frustrating. But this is just common sense and common decency. And there's a lot of it out there right now. Protect yourself, protect other people, particularly those who are vulnerable.
How many viruses out there? I suppose you wouldn't know, but are a lot of these viruses basically just unknown?
No, I wouldn't say they're unknown. I mean, they change. Every now and again something new pops up, as we've seen. The COVID's not even new. It's just it's a variation of what's been there before. RSV, for most of my career was a virus that affected kids. You just wouldn't see it in adults, but whatever has happened to it, whatever changes happened, it's now, one of the main things we're seeing, like affecting elderly folks and, making them sick and unwell. So, there is a vaccine for it now, which is good, but it sort of changed how we approach, assessing some of these viruses and sort of walking pneumonia type pictures.
Okay, here's an email question from Richard. Says, does the gauge of a needle actually have an impact on the potential pain during injection? He says, I've heard that a larger needle gauge may actually result in less pain due to details around site and delivery pressure. Any thoughts?
I stick needles in people all day, most days, doing pain work. And, generally speaking, the higher the number, which means the thinner the needle, has less pain. It's causing less of a entry point. It's causing less disruption to the tissue. So, when I can, I use the smallest needle possible. Sometimes it's not possible. The smaller the needle, it tends to be shorter and it tends to bend more. So if you need to get to a certain depth, you need to use a lower gauge, meaning a bigger, needle, for its rigidity and its length.
Okay, 902-405-6000. Keith, hello.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing well.
Good. I'm just calling to see what kind of treatment I can do for plantar fasciitis.
Yes, plantar fasciitis is an inflammation of the bottom of the foot. The fascia is the tissue or the material between your heel and goes along the bottom of your foot. Fasciitis is just when that gets inflamed. Usually that's, from how we walk or run relative to the shape of our feet and, what we're wearing on our feet. If you sit at a desk all day, you're probably not going to get plantar fasciitis. If you're walking around in flat work boots on your feet all day, you're more likely to get inflamed. So the starting point, I guess there's a couple things. One is assess your footwear and to optimize what you're wearing for comfort and also for support of the arch, or, in some cases, if you have flat feet, bringing up the heel can help. So, seeing a physio or a podiatrist about that to determine if you just need, something as simple as an insole or a heel lift, or if you need an orthotic can help. Anti-inflammatories and local treatment, at the area can help. Local treatment meaning some stuff that, physios and chiros can offer, acupuncture, laser current, some of that stuff. Injections, I don't like injecting people's, feet for plantar fasciitis. It works sometimes, but it's quite painful and it doesn't always work. So I really encourage people to, try and figure out why this is happening, and as Todd mentioned earlier, the body is a machine that doesn't always work the way we want it to. Personally, I used to have terrible Achilles problems because I have relatively flat feet and, wearing flat rugby cleats was just constantly irritating it. By just changing, putting a insole in that would lift my heel a tiny bit, took away the problem. And, it's just a biomechanical thing. So probably start there and looking at what you're wearing on your feet and, the amount of time you're spending on your feet is a good place to start. Then get some treatment or concurrently get some treatment to try and settle it down. And hopefully it'll be less of an issue for you.
Alrighty, thanks.
Okay, thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls with Dr. Gillis. We've got Dr. Gillis to the top of the hour. 902-405-6000. House calls continues when we come back.
I tried to make it Sunday, but I got so damn depressed that I set my sights on Monday and I got myself undressed. I ain't ready for the altar, but I do agree there's times when a woman sure can be a friend of mine. But I keep
All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. Should we take this guy seriously? When I say this guy, I'm talking about Donald Trump. That's right, the president-elect. He will be inaugurated January 20th. And he continues to talk about, and look, I'm starting to think that we got to take him seriously. That it's not just the ramblings of somebody who is bored in the middle of the night talking on or posting on social media. Is he serious? Is he kidding when it comes to annexing Canada and us becoming the 51st state? How serious should we take this? Justin Trudeau responded, said not a snowball's chance in hell. Well, there you go. That's probably the most popular thing he's said in quite a long time, actually. But what are your thoughts on this? And look, if he is serious, how much is it reality? And you look at what's at stake here, and look, he can cripple us with sanctions, basically. I don't know that there's any economist or academic or business leader that would say otherwise, that if in fact the United States imposed a 25% tariff on all products from this country into the U.S. across the board and stuck with it and dug their heels in as some war of attrition, economic attrition, then we would be in serious trouble. Yes, it would hurt the U.S. economy as well. It absolutely would. It would hurt depending on the industry. And Doug Ford has talked about cutting power to millions of people in the United States that rely on power which is produced in Ontario. So look, it's not as though we don't have some leverage. But when all is said and done, if you've got a president ardent and determined to smoke us out economically, they can do so because the imbalance is quite steep. And the argument that Trump is making and is resonating with many, many millions of Americans is that we've been getting a free ride on the back of the United States for far too long, militarily and economically. That we've been the benefactors to the tune of billions of dollars. He calls it a subsidy. And Americans are listening and are starting to take him seriously. So as this momentum grows, how concerning is it for you? Or do you think that when all is said and done, this is just Trump being Trump and nothing's going to become of it and we're wasting our time even talking about it? That was what I said on this show just probably a couple of weeks ago. Was that I thought this was a ridiculous concept, that it's just Trump being Trump and there'll be nothing will come of it. But I'm starting to be a little concerned. And I think for good reason. 902-405-6000. What's your take on all of this? And of course, it comes at the worst possible time when we are basically paralyzed politically with our parliament prorogued and leadership in a state of transition and a lame duck prime minister in Justin Trudeau, who I don't think Trump takes very seriously. So what are your thoughts on this, folks? Give us a call. What do you think? Do you think that there's cause for concern here? Maybe some of you out there like the concept of Canada becoming the 51st state. I don't know that many of you would. Probably the odd person might think so. But give us a call. 902-405-6000. Stephen, hello.
Good afternoon, Todd. How have you been?
Well, you?
I've been well. Yeah, you had a pretty large lead up to that. And I think for a lot of people, even if they're educated themselves enough to know about Donald Trump, is we really don't know how serious he is, because he talks about many subjects all during the lead up to his presidency, and a lot of them are pure misinformation or disinformation. And the same people that are probably listening to him now to buy into a lot of what he has said about Canada are probably the same populace that voted him into office. And we're not going to go down that road, vote him into office again. But I think we had to take him serious on the left hand, but on the right hand, realize that at some point in time, cleaner heads will probably prevail, because a lot of what he said, and I won't take a lot of time, is just pure statements, but they're not backed up by pure fact, as Donald Trump normally does. Because when I watched him last night, he was going on, he said that the United States doesn't need the 25% of the vehicles that we make here. We'll just make them in Detroit. Well, he didn't break it down that the vast majority of vehicles made in Detroit, in numerous number of parts, come across the bridge from Canada. And some of them come across and go back and forth a couple of times before they're finally installed. We don't need their energy. Well, hang on now. Just like Doug Ford didn't break it down, but, we feed power to the 4 New England states, New York, 8 or 9 states in the American Midwest, Oregon, California. I'm not going to give a lecture here. But a tremendous amount of power goes there. 97%. These aren't my numbers, by the way. People quote you numbers all the time, and you like confirming numbers as I do.
Yeah.
All these numbers come from the federal website of Canada's energy regulator website. You're welcome to read it. And, 97% of all Canada's exported crude oil goes to the United States. They need our crude oil, because where else are they going to look for it? China, Russia, given how they're dealing there. But the part that's worrisome to me, and I'm going to sum up, there was 2 things that really bothered me, was that he was very adamant to say that he would take Canada, it's almost a direct quote, by economic force, not military force, and he'd retake the Panama Canal by military force if necessary. And he was going to, rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. But this morning, and I'll finish up, a lot of people waiting on the line, the fact that he even name-dropped Wayne Gretzky's name and went into a rhetoric on Wayne Gretzky in 2 seconds would become Prime Minister of Canada, or could become the Governor of Canada, his choice, was the main point that I found there was that they interviewed on Global TV this morning, they interviewed 2 former ambassadors. One was from the U.S. to Canada. The other one was a Canadian who was the ambassador to the U.S. And they kind of played it down that this was Trump with his rhetoric, but clearer heads would prevail once we had all the diplomat and all the area subject matter expertise people for trade sitting around the table. And this is just Trump spewing forth his normal rhetoric prior to taking office in less than 2 weeks. So is he serious? I think he's serious on one hand. Whether all these bad things will come to pass, I'm not quite sure, because Canada could inflict a great deal of economic damage on the U.S., but given our relationship overall and the fact that this is the first president since the War of 1812 that has used such forceful, insulting language towards a sovereign nation of Canada is very troublesome as well. So basically, I've eaten up more time than maybe I should have.
Okay, Stephen, thanks for your comments. Appreciate it.
Bye now.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. So what are your thoughts on this, folks? 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, we continue with our house call segment with Dr. John Gillis. We've got Dr. Gillis to the top of the hour. Get some room for you as well. 902-405-6000. If you've got a health-related question or concern, 902-405-6000. Here's an email question. It says, in the past 2 years, I've had diarrhea a few times a week, but in the last few weeks, it's been more chronic, 4 to 8 times a day. I've eliminated all suspected food groups such as dairy, caffeine, alcohol, etc., and tried to eat only basic foods for diarrhea prevention as suggested online. Nothing seems to be working. Any suggestions to help stop it?
Does the email mention Imodium or anything like that?
No.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess the first principle is if there's been a change, I mean, you don't want to ignore it. You may want to check with your doctor to see if anything else needs to be done. Make sure there's no blood or any other things like, sudden weight loss that's new. In the absence of all that stuff, maybe you need to go the opposite way. Go back to eating terribly large donaires and rum to reverse the trend. Might help, but just kidding. trial of Imodium as directed on the bottle would be the place to start. And if that's not, and some more fiber, some Metamucil, that sort of thing to bulk things up, and then check in with your health provider.
Okay, 902-405-6000. Here's another email question. It's short and succinct, but to the point. What are the common signs or issues with a prostate?
Well, I'm not really sure what that means.
Well, I think it means things to look out for, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, if your prostate is enlarged, which is probably what the emailer is talking about, it can cause difficulty, starting to pee. It can cause difficulty, emptying your bladder completely because it starts to obstruct things. Prostate infections can cause, pain in the area and discomfort on peeing. Really one of the issues with prostate cancer and that sort of thing is it has no symptoms when it's early days. So that's why getting screened and doing the PSA and as much as men don't want to talk about it, getting an exam is important because often if you have a prostate infection or enlargement, which can be benign but annoying, but it's not gonna kill you. There may be symptoms, but with prostate cancer, it can be slow and silent until it's really spread.
All right, let's talk a little bit about alcohol consumption. This is something that comes up somewhat regularly in warning labels. And while Canada hasn't mandated cancer warning for alcohol beverages, a few experts are supporting a new push in the United States to have labels on products. What's your kind of takeaway when it comes to advice when it comes to alcohol consumption here? We've talked about this before. It's like anything, moderation, being aware of what you're doing and understanding that, it is a toxin, but in mild to moderate use, if people keep track of their usage, they can enjoy it safely. But, increasingly there is data around how it can, we already know that it causes, liver and cardiovascular problems, that it can have a link to cancer, and people just need to be educated. And I think generally we're seeing a trend in our society towards, more responsible use, particularly in younger generations. And, that's a positive thing. Okay. Peter, hello. Hi, Peter.
Hi, how are you?
Well, go ahead.
I want to speak about neuropathy. I'm a musician, and I have neuropathy in my hands and my toes. Is there anything that can reverse that or help it?
Well, we always ask first, how were you diagnosed with neuropathy, and what's been done to this point?
I was diagnosed by a specialist, and he put me on a medication, and the medication didn't mix very well with my system and other medications that I'm on, and the other medications I'm on are for hip surgery and things like that.
Okay, what was that medication that they put you on?
I can't remember because I took it up to my family doctor, and I said, this isn't working for me, and he said, let's put it in the garbage.
Okay, no, so understanding that is important, and there are a variety of medications that we try for neuropathy. We often start with the old antidepressants like amitriptyline and nortriptyline. Then we move on sometimes to drugs like gabapentin and pregabalin, which are similar to each other. And there are other, anticonvulsants and other drugs that, have been shown to be useful, for nerve pain. It really is a matter of, going through, the process of trying different meds to see if you tolerate them, in the context of, as you said, everything else that you're on, side effects and that sort of thing. In terms of reversing things, those drugs don't really reverse things. They help, treat the symptoms and the inflammation and the irritation. What else is important is, determining, well, why do you have neuropathy? If you're a diabetic, make sure your diabetes is under control. If there's another cause, do what you can to minimize that. Those are the most important things. But I'd circle back with your practitioner, about, if what you were on before didn't work, there may be other options for you that you'll tolerate better and that will give you some relief.
Okay, I'm on the highest dose of gabapentin I can take. The thing that's frustrating for me, getting up in the morning not feeling my nose, and then sitting down at the piano, not feeling the key anymore.
Yeah, I'm having trouble hearing you there. You're breaking up a little bit.
I'm sorry. My biggest problem is waking up in the morning, not being able to stand properly, and then sitting at my piano, not being able to feel the keys like I used to all along.
Yeah, no, that's definitely frustrating. So, I mean, if you are on something for nerve pain now, if you're on gabapentin, then maybe just
I'm on the highest dose. Sorry, go ahead.
You're on the highest dose, or the highest dose you can tolerate?
Highest dose.
Okay, I mean, to me, that's 3,600 milligrams a day.
That's right. That's what I'm on.
So you're on 3,600 milligrams a day?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would circle back and, see what's next. There are some other drugs beyond that you could try. Yeah, that's what's next.
Okay, Peter, good luck.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Guys.
All right, let's just try to get one more on quickly. Philip, you got to be quick. Go ahead, though.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I'm just wondering, I have COVID here for the last week or so, and I'm just wondering, I haven't gotten the COVID vaccine yet or anything, or the flu shot. Can I get that any time after I start getting over this the COVID that I presently have? Or do I have to wait for
I usually suggest people wait a week after they're symptom-free. There's some data saying that, quite a bit of data, actually, that, after you've had COVID, you may want to wait a month or two, given that you're immune. But you can go get it, I guess, is the answer if you want to get ahead of it, get it together. So it'd be okay to get it, a week after you're symptom-free. But you could wait, up to 2 to 3 months, given that you've just had COVID. So, there's no exact right answer to that.
Yeah. Is there any truth to that if you had COVID, once you get over it, you can't get it for another couple of months or so, or something like that?
Generally, that's the case. We've seen some rebound cases where the strain is different, so people will get one strain and then they'll get a different strain. That happens, but generally that's true, and that's sort of why people would say you can, if you want to wait to get it a few months, it's okay to do that. And for some time that's what was suggested. So that's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay,
have a nice day.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Gillis. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Talk to you soon, Todd.
All right, take care. All right, that's Dr. John Gillis. That's House Calls. And now we get some time for you. What is on your mind today? 902-405-6000. Should we take Donald Trump seriously when it comes to his musings and his threats? Basically, I think we could call it a threat at this point. Well, it's becoming the 51st state. 902-405-6000. Give us a call. We'll be back. All right, 902-405-6000. Is Donald Trump kidding? That's the question. And if he's not kidding, how concerned are you about this Canada becoming the 51st state and him using economic measures by way of tariffs, basically economic warfare on this country in order to achieve that, and to bring us to our knees? 902-405-6000. It's hard to believe that we're even having these conversations, but it's the reality that we live in today, folks. Mike, hello.
Hello. How's it going today?
Well, you?
Doing well. I think we should take it seriously, and I also think joining America is a great opportunity for us, as long as Nova Scotia gets statehood. So if we want to protect the sovereignty of Nova Scotians here, I think Tim Houston needs to call a referendum about joining America as soon as possible, not as Canada, but as Nova Scotia. Whether you want Nova Scotia to join America or you don't, holding a referendum on this question is the best way to ensure that Nova Scotians get a say on what happens over Trump's presidency. And otherwise, we're going to end up losing control to Ottawa because they will prioritize Ontario and Quebec over what is good for Nova Scotians. If it's Poilievre negotiating this new trade deal, then Alberta's interests will take priority over ours. Either way, if the biggest existential question of our lifetimes is being decided at the national level, Nova Scotians' interests will not be be protected. And God forbid, if Canada actually became one single state within the USA, Nova Scotians would lose all of our autonomy, all of our sovereignty. We would have all the problems of the Canadian government without the benefits of our local government in Halifax. A provincial referendum protects us either way it goes, and we still live in a democratic world. A referendum is the most democratic expression we can make. So I say to Premier Tim Houston, call a referendum, go to Washington and talk about what this would actually look like. If Nova Scotians were to vote in favor of joining America, would we be granted statehood? Would we get 2 senators like every other state? What about New Brunswick? Are New Brunswickers going to vote on this? I think all of Atlantic Canada needs to look very seriously at this as an option, because at the end of the day, Canada has never really worked for Atlantic Canada. It certainly hasn't worked for Nova Scotia. And if you look at the history, Nova Scotia voted to leave Canada twice. We voted to leave in the very first federal election in Canadian history. The British wouldn't allow us to leave, but we live in a very different world now where democracy is supposed to reign supreme. So I think Nova Scotians deserve a make-up vote on whether we want to stay in Canada, whether we want to join the U.S., or whether we want to go it alone. But we need to make the decision ourselves and not wait, because if we wait, Ottawa could make the decision for us.
Well, you put a lot of thought into this, Mike.
Yeah, well, I think it's the most important question of our lifetimes in Nova Scotia. And I think joining America would represent the single greatest wealth increase in Nova Scotia history. It's certainly in 100 years since the coal boom. Using the U.S. dollar would be great for Nova Scotians. It would alleviate a lot of our affordability problems right now. The Port of Halifax would certainly boom. If the Port of Halifax didn't have the hassle of customs and duties, we would be rivaling any of the eastern seaboard U.S. ports, because if you look at the situation on the east coast of the United States, the ports are overrun with container traffic. They can't handle it all. So if Halifax didn't have the problem of being in Canada, we could be taking advantage of all that shipping traffic, and that would be a huge economic boon for Nova Scotians. So I think now is the time to see this as an opportunity. Obviously, Mr. Trump is being a bully here, and the context of this conversation is not very pleasant. But at the same time, the opportunity for Nova Scotia to join America is one of the best opportunities for this province that we've seen in 100 years, I think.
Okay.
So we should take it very seriously.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Appreciate your comments. Take care. 902-405-6000. Ken, hello. Hi, Ken.
Todd, how you doing?
Doing well, you?
Good, man. Yeah, the previous caller made some good points. You know the saying that common sense isn't all that common?
Yeah.
Well, apparently it doesn't seem like critical thinking is either. I've been listening to a lot of talk over the talk radio the last few weeks about Trump and what he's threatening to do or saying he's going to do. But I think we got to step back and look at it from, a 30,000-foot view. I don't think Trump's, now this is my opinion, but it seems to be that Trump's goal is not to make us a state, right? He's high in rhetoric in order to get the compromise that he wants, right? It's a Hegelian dialectic. So I believe what he wants to do is create a union like the European Union. So each would retain their nation-state status, but we would have no border as far as travel restriction, work restriction. We'll have a common currency. We'll be a bigger bloc. It'll definitely benefit Canada, and I agree with Michael what he was saying previously about benefiting most of Canada, considering that our richest province is poorer than the poorest province in the state. So I think being tied to them in an economic union, like the European Union, I think is exactly what he's going for. And a lot of people are, light their hair on fire thinking that Canada's going to get destroyed by this. But from what I've heard from Trump and other pundits and stuff, that doesn't seem to be his goal. It seems to be that he just wants to strengthen. Think about it. It'd be a lot easier to defend the perimeter of Canada and have the United States with their resources up north protecting our northern flank.
Well, Ken, I know, but listen, there's a lot of challenges to it as well when you look at our healthcare system in particular. But I could go on and on with the difference. There are many commonalities between our two countries, but there are a lot of differences as well. And culturally, is there not a discussion to be had culturally as well that, Ken, you might have some issues with?
No, because look at the European Union, right? They each run their own countries as they see fit to a certain point, right? And culturally, they're each like Germans are still Germans. They still have their German culture. Czechoslovakians, like everybody is part of the European Union, so we wouldn't lose any of that. I don't think the question is losing here. I think the question is gaining for us economically, financially, and for the states, it's gaining security-wise and, access to our resources, which kind of goes, I won't speak on it, but it's the same reason why Trump wants Greenland. Greenland wants to be independent. Problem is they don't have the resources to protect their sovereignty from China or Russia coming in on the north and exploiting them. That's why Trump wants to be in some sort of partnership with them so that it'll prevent the other players from trying to sneak in. Anyway, those are just my 2 cents.
Okay, appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Look, it's an affront almost. Not almost, it really is. It can't get lost that the President of the United States, it's not like this is some invitation. This is a warning call. This is basically a warning, a shot across the bow, whatever it is, saying that he will cripple us economically, basically, if we don't comply. To me, that's not something that is benign or something that, it's not an invitation. This is a threat. And to me, it's scary, and it can't get lost, folks. This is a direct threat from the person who's going to be moving into the White House January 20th and continuing to talk about it. And look, I don't know that I shouldn't say I don't know. To me, that is not diplomacy. That is not the way to act as a global leader. 902-405-6000. To me, this is dangerous, right? When you are basically saying, we want you to be the 51st state, and it's not an invitation, it's a threat. And we're going to back it up with crippling economic sanctions, basically, on your country and all the goods that are imported. To me, that's dangerous. And I don't know that we should just welcome that with open arms, despite the fact that people have had conversations about what the benefits might be economically. But this is an aggressor, not a military aggressor, but an aggressor nonetheless. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Get in on the action. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. Taking your calls, 902-405-6000. Look, folks, I'm not suggesting that under the current economic and cultural situation that we exist in, and that, yes, we've gone through changes. We have an affordability crisis. We have crisis all the time propping up. But generally, life in Canada is what it's been for most of us for a very long time. And we're very traditional. And I'm not suggesting that if things remain the way that they are, that there would be an appetite to become the 51st state or a state or whatever, a part of or an appendage of the United States. But that can change. And what would make that change? Desperation. That's what would make it change. When desperation sets in, people do desperate things. And if Trump is serious and he maintained the support politically through Congress and through the Senate in the United States and the electorate in general, and he thought he could pull it off and he could cripple us economically, which they could do, then that would then lead to desperation. Is that really the modern world that we want to live in, where we're held, where we're pinned to the ground economically by our closest ally in the United States? Is that the example that the United States wants to set? Now, look, if Trump thinks that there's issues with trade and we've been getting a free ride, which he does, and all of that stuff, then I guess there are ways you can deal with that. But to come out full throttle, unfiltered, and to say things like, we will hold you with economic force until you resist, until your resistance is futile, basically, and you capitulate to becoming a part of our country and do what we want you to do. I don't know any other way to observe this other than to say that is damn scary, folks. That is scary, scary stuff. Now, I get it that Trump wants to be seen as, and perhaps in his mind he's doing the right thing by the American people, by protecting American interest and the American economy. But you can't just simply go scorched earth and not expect to get blowback. So how do we respond to that? I don't know. I don't know how we respond to that. But here's the thing. Trump is only as powerful as the people around him allow him to be and the American people allow him to be. He's only that powerful. And if the American people and the Senate and Congress and all of these people that are surrounding him in his executive branch and his cabinet sit back and nobody says, whoa, this is wrong, then he will be continue to push in these unhinged ways. And that's scary stuff. 902-405-6000, just my take, as I always say. Dave, hello.
Hello, Todd.
Hi there.
What an interesting show you have on.
Thank you, sir.
A lot of fear-mongering going on here, in my opinion. And I blame Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh to a certain degree that we're in this position because they've weakened our country enormously over the last few years. And Trudeau is he's a weak leader, goes into hiding, and we're vulnerable. And Trump sees that. He's a businessman. Now, Trump only has so much resources and so much time. He has a razor thin. He holds the Senate, the House, and the Supreme Court to a certain degree. And he'll have the Washington as well. So, but for 2 years, he's got the midterm. And he only has so much energy, I guess, or so much time, resources to get things done. He has bigger fish to fry. I don't know if you know this, but in Mar-a-Lago already, he's had the head of Netflix, Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, Apple, Tim Cook, Amazon, Jeff Bezos, and Google, Sundar Pichai. And he's talked to them all, straightened them out. Look what Zuckerberg's done with Facebook already, and freed up a little bit more freedom of speech on there. He has a lot of power. And these are corporate people, and that's very important. And Mr. Wonderful himself was down there. Listen to him. He's a very interesting man. And he speaks on the side of Canada. And it's very positive, to be honest with you. I don't think we should – look, Quebec's had a gun to our heads forever here.
You think Kevin O'Leary's positive about Canada?
I think he is, yes.
Wow.
Business-wise, he's a businessman. And
I don't care if he's a businessman. That doesn't mean he's positive. I think Kevin O'Leary's approach is
that's your opinion, Todd, and that's fair enough. But I'm just saying he knows what's going on more than you and I do, probably. To be honest with you, I mean, he's got a lot of investments in the United States. And another thing, when it comes to the tariffs, there's a lot of U.S. corporate money up here. Walmart's, big business, big energy companies, Chevron, Esso, all those things. They have roots in Canada here, and that's going to hurt them as well, right? So think about that as well, folks. This is just far-fetched stuff. Didn't he want to change the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America? Come on, really? I mean, let's settle down a little bit here. And Quebec, like I said, look, they've been, even before Trump, the Western, Alberta has threatened because of the transfer payments and whatever we used to have or we still have. We're a lot throwing money to welfare provinces like ourselves and what have you. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to mock us, but we were the welfare provinces and it wasn't fair. Quebec, has gotten whatever they've wanted over the years. And, and borders do change, but I can't see it happening. Honest to God, I can't see it happening. But here's the thing. He has threatened Hamas. If they don't release those prisoners by the time his inauguration is done, which, if I'm not mistaken, is on the 20th, let's see how serious he is with that first, okay? And if he's serious with that, or they'll be held to pay is what he's saying, let's see how serious with that first, folks, before we become another state. But you know what? It is reason, food for fodder, I guess, if you will, because it does make you wonder. Our dollar is $1.45 to theirs, and there's other things that could be positive from it, but I don't think we even have to concern ourselves with that, quite frankly. But yeah, it is something to think about. But it ain't going to happen, folks. We have bigger things to worry about, I'm sure. And I do blame Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh for putting us in this situation. We are at very vulnerable times right now. And we've been under a lot of hardship as well with our economy because we've been driven in the ground by these folks. So, and Trump is an opportunist, we know that. And no, I don't think, but he's got a plan.
Okay.
He has a plan right now, and he's going to, but no, these are just, do you ever hear him talk about the weave?
Yes, I've heard him talk about the weave. Yes, I have.
And he throws all this around, right? It spins around. He's everybody. And you know what? It's good to be taught. It's good to be on our toes, because I think in some ways the world.
Yeah, I don't know, Dave, how in a world where you can convince me that it's good that the president is talking in these unhinged terms about our country. I don't think that, Dave, I'm going to disagree with you there, but listen.
I don't know if it's unhinged terms, but you know what? The world has come unhinged anyways under the leftist government.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Dave. Okay, there we go. 902-405-6000. I don't know how you could call that not unhinged. If that's not unhinged, what is unhinged? Really, though. I mean, you want to talk about a lack of diplomacy and a lack of tact. That is unhinged, in my opinion. Whether he's got issues that are valid concerning the U.S. economy and a trade imbalance and military spending imbalance and all that, those are legitimate issues. And you could talk about measures to deal with them. But to me, this is just way over the top. Vic, hello. Hi, Vic.
Hello, Todd.
Hi there.
How's it going today?
Well, you?
Good. Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on the the president of the United States. In effect, I don't know if he's telling us he's going to do something, or he's just making fun. What do you think?
Well, that's just it. Up until recently, and when I say recently, I mean this week, I was in the mindset of that it's all talk and he's just making fun and he's positioning himself. But I'm starting to wonder. This is daily that he's talking about this, and he seems pretty serious. And I'm concerned, Vic, to be completely honest with you.
Well, it was my thought exactly when I first heard him mention this. He started it a little while back, right, making threats about the tariffs and that type of thing. And I thought then it was mostly, I guess you'd have to call him a bit of a blowhard, although I guess that would cover it. But it's in the end of it. I don't think there's anybody in this country that's truly interested in being part of the American states, in my opinion, anyway. Right? So there's nothing much we could do. But it on one hand, if you listen to the guy and comment to others and talk about it, you're giving the guy space. You're giving him time and space. And I'd just as soon it wasn't discussed at all. Just ignore the guy. But I guess it's pretty hard.
But
to do
Vic,
that.
are we giving it to him, or is he taking it? Is he taking the space?
I guess maybe he is taking it just by what he's doing. Exactly what he's doing.
Yeah. How do I come on the air today and not talk about this? Right?
No, I get that's true. It's true. I know I've tried not to discuss it with other people because it just sort of, I don't know, pisses me off when I just to even talk about the guy, right? It turns your stomach, right? But I guess we've got no choice now that it's out in the open, and whether it's a threat or more of his foolishness, I guess we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Vic. Appreciate the call.
Thanks.
Take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. We're continuing with your calls. 902-405-6000. Let's see where we're going next. Talk to Jeremy. Hello, Jeremy.
Good morning, Todd. How you doing?
Well, you?
Not good. After that news conference that Donald Trump had. First thing, I want to make clear, I don't want to be part of the states for various reasons. Second of all, I don't think it could happen anyway. Even if Canada wanted to join, I don't think the states would allow it for political reasons. And third, I think we need to pull our heads out of the sand and take this seriously, because I think he is serious. just based on what I saw and watching other shows. I'll give you an example. Kevin O'Leary went down over the weekend to talk to Trump. I watched him on Fox Business the other day, talked about his meeting, and he looked worried after his meeting with Trump. He's serious. I think he's serious. I think these tariffs are coming, and I hope our government gets its acts together and deals with this threat, and it is a threat to our way of life. If you don't think this is going to affect our social institutions, like our healthcare and stuff, think again, because it will.
Oh yeah, it would have a massive impact on our social network for sure, and our social safety net. Huge. The upheaval would be massive for a lot of reasons. Even industries that are now regulated in this province and in this country and are protected by regulation would all be thrown wide open. It would be endless, and I would suggest massive transitional pain for many people here and thousands and millions of Canadians. I don't think it would be an easy transition at all. I think it would be a brutal transition.
Yeah, and here's the thing. If people want to know why Trump's doing it, in my opinion, this is what I think. I think it's greed. He sees an opportunity to get access to our resources, take advantage of us.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he can point to the rest of the world. See what I did to our closest ally and friend? What do you think I'll do to you?
Yeah, I suppose.
If you don't fall in line.
Yeah.
Like, I seriously, I really am worried about this. And I honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this parole gets canceled and they call an election and they try to deal with this problem sooner than later.
Okay, Jeremy, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Take care.
You're welcome.
Okay, 902-405-6000. John, hello.
Hey, Todd, how you doing?
Well, you?
Good, thanks. I'm going to agree with you that Trump is unhinged. I'd also like to say maybe a few of your callers there as well today. I don't think this is a real credible threat. I would say he's a media whore. So he gets some likes. He made a joke. The Canadian media blew it out of proportion. And, of course, the more likes he gets, the more he doubles down. So I don't think this is a big issue. I think a lot of people spend too much time on CNN and it's getting some legs, Kevin O'Leary. Who cares about him? I'm with you on that one. That's about all I have.
Okay, thanks, John. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, 902-405-6000. Another Jeremy. Hello, Jeremy.
How you doing, Todd?
Well, you?
Good. I think that anybody who says we shouldn't take this seriously is, not serious enough. I guess. I think, the rhetoric that's coming out, I mean, is it rhetoric at this stage? He's threatening the sovereignty of multiple different countries in different ways, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, he's not talked about force against Canada except for economic force, but certainly we've seen that.
That is force.
Look, we've seen it in other actual wars where, energy and heat during the winter was cut off as a tactic of war, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, to think that, and I mean, I don't know if anybody or enough people know about Donald Trump's early beginnings, right? I mean, he's a protege of Roy Cohn. I don't know if, any of the listeners know who he is, but he was a lawyer during the McCarthy era who ruthlessly went after people for their ideology and their beliefs, right? And I think, you need to keep that in mind. And it's not just Trump going after his enemies in the political spectrum within the states. It's going after his, perceived enemies of any political stripe or color in any country at this stage, it seems anyway, right? Wherever he can gain an advantage, he's going to try and gain an advantage. Because why? He's not a politician who chose to serve the people. He's a businessman who got into politics, I think, as a way to exert influence on other business people. I mean, look, one of your earlier callers said Bezos has been down to Mar-a-Lago. Mark Zuckerberg's been down to Mar-a-Lago. Elon Musk certainly has the ear of the president right now, the richest man in the world, right? I mean, I think if we don't take him seriously, we really only have ourselves to blame for what may come of it if we don't start making preparations. And I said it on one of your shows weeks ago. I think the provinces need to get together. The prime minister or whoever's in power federally everybody needs to come to the table and start to talk about what it is that we have that is of value to the United States that we can either stop shipping to them, stop exporting to them, or stop buying from them in order to exert economic pressure on the regular, everyday American. Because Trump is so isolated from anything that we would do on a day-to-day basis But I think if you start to make it painful for the American people somehow, some way, and then public opinion goes against him, that's when things may simmer down a bit, because his ego, I don't think, can handle people, especially his base saying he did it, he got it wrong, he did it wrong, it's hurting us now. But I think this idea that he's not serious about, doing things to hurt other countries, I think that's just a ridiculous assumption to make.
Okay, Jeremy, thanks for your comments. Appreciate it. Take care.
Cheers.
All right, 902-405-6000. Michael, hello.
How are you doing, Todd?
Well, you...
Todd, the most disrespectful thing you could ever do to another country is with that convicted felon, rapist, crook. There's so many names you could tag on him. But this is the time for people to show a little backbone and stand up and start fighting back rather than bend over and submitting to gangsters like that from the States. And Todd, just in leaving, could somebody please take that medal of the Order of Canada away from Wayne Gretzky? I'll leave you with that, Todd.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for the call. Take care. I don't know that we want to start taking medals away from people because of their political viewpoints, but I understand that Gretzky certainly raised a lot of eyebrows with his affiliation and connection with Donald Trump. But look, it's a free country, as they say. Chris, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Well, you?
Well, really good show today.
Thank you.
Really good callers. Yeah, there's only one I disagree with. That's Dave's not here. Yeah, that Dave guy.
Yeah.
I don't know about him. Like, maybe he should have another gummy or something. Like, he's putting down Trudeau. Called him a week later? I don't think so. Like, he did good. He's probably a PC Poilievre. He's in bed with Poilievre. Like, yeah, he's a PC guy. He put down the Liberals and Trudeau. And, Trump, you're right. The guy, that last caller, Trump should be locked up. Like, tell you, he's got money and lawyers and, he owns half the states. But, yeah, that Dave guy, he should smoke another joint.
Okay. All right. I think we've covered it. Look, the reality is this, folks. I'm not going to be able to get to all of you. For that, I apologize. I will open the phone lines again tomorrow, and something tells me we'll continue to be talking about this for a very long time to come. But the reality is this: is that I was of the belief that this was just simply just rhetoric, just Trump being bored in the middle of the night. I don't know that we can continue to dismiss it in this way. I don't know that we can do that. I don't know that we can just dismiss Trump, and should we take him at his word? I don't know, but I have a level of concern. I will say that. I am now concerned about this because of the ability for him to impose sanctions and economic sanctions and weaken and cripple our economy. And it appears as though he is unhinged, in my humble opinion. Thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it. Thanks to Vanessa Van Den Ness as well on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job as always. We're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.